Hello, Roy.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very, very well.
Wow, well, welcome to the desert island. You've arrived perfectly dressed for the occasion.
Thank you.
In fact, I've got serious hat envy there, Roy.
So it's a Panama hat made in Ecuador. That's where they're made.
Perfect.
And this original vintage Paradise Found from Hawaii.
Wow, you're the man. You're the man. All that's missing now is a big cigar.
Yeah, so I don't really smoke.
Okay.
It's very contradictory. But I definitely like island drinks.
Oh, good man. Well, I've got my secret recipe coconut drink as ever. Tell us what's in your glass there, Roy.
So it's a vintage glass.
Wow.
With the funkiest shape in the world. You can actually wrap your hand inside like this.
Okay.
Which I got a few from my parents. No, but the contents are local grown, harvested and produced apple quince juice.
Wow. Really living local.
The alcohol. Even though my favorite drinks are going to be like I could just add like a dash of ginger and rum, and it will be the happiest. I'll be the happiest in the world.
Perfect. So we're on the desert island together. We've got some time to catch up. Hopefully you've managed to pack some watches for the trip. So let's go through them, Roy, and we can look at your desert island dials.
So yeah. So first, I thought if I go on a desert island, the first thing I need is something indestructible.
Yeah.
So I in the last I've always been like a Seiko fan, and then last year I acquired with a friend of mine a really cool US only edition Seiko diver, which has a solar powered movement.
Cool.
But I thought that would be like, because like it's a watch, the least chance of something would happen to the watch, but actually it's the one watch that I use to set the time on all my other watches.
Oh, right. Okay. Cool.
I wanted to
pick. Let's share a picture of this. Here we go. Yeah, that's super cool.
Exactly. Over the and I've dove, whatever. I've gone diving with it.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, quite a few times. In Greece. It's a watch that I don't mind jumping off of boats with and all that stuff. So it's I feel it was the proper watch, the first thing to come to mind. But as a watch collector, I decided to also bring some other watches.
Oh, what a gentleman. Right, I'm going to just stop sharing this one. So tell us, I mean, this is great. So we've got the Seiko, because it's solar powered. We've got no problem. There's always sun on the island here. So we're never going to need to worry about batteries running out or having to put our watches on winders with this one. So we can all set our watches from the solar diver.
Exactly. No, so that's exactly why I got it. And it's a great diving watch. So it's like a backup in case my automatic diving, which segue into my Rolex Sea-Dweller.
Oh yes.
Which is quite interesting because I wasn't for the Cyclops, and then I understood all the research and development that went into having having a Cyclops on a Sea-Dweller, how difficult it was. So I was like, you know what, it's kind of cool. And then at 43 millimeters, it sits on my wrist, like a beauty. Like really, it's. I wear it, and people look at it a bit strange, and they're like, "Which 40 millimeter is that?" I'm like, "It's 43."
Yeah.
Like my wrist. I mean, I'm wearing another one today, but my wrist is quite large. So you know,
okay.
36 all the way up to like 45, no problem.
Yeah. I mean, for me, this watch is real kind of testament to Rolex's commitment to constantly go through that R&D and make it work. And I'll never forget, I was at Basel the morning this watch was released, and you know, Rolex's releases tend to break the internet, don't they? And I remember this particular watch, and there being a bit of an outcry about the fact that they'd kind of dared to put a Cyclops on the Sea-Dweller, but what people hadn't realised is that they'd always wanted to do that. They just couldn't get the Cyclops to stay on the glass at the depths to which the Sea-Dweller was tested, and this was the first time that they'd managed to do that.
One of the things that I really love, I mean, it has a lot of little winks to the past. First of all, it's all the Sea-Dwellers now, deep sea or whichever, since they're ceramic, all have a 60-minute graduated bezel and not just the first 15. And it's a matte dial. They went back from glossy to matte, which they did on the first ceramic they did a couple years ago, 40 millimeter. And it has the new movement. It has the one red line. The bracelets. It feels quite comfortable. It's a really, for me, it's automatic, so I wouldn't wear it. I mean, it's a diver's watch, and at night I don't wear watches because I'm afraid that, you know, let's say I'm on a desert island and I swing my arm around and I might, you know, kill my watch.
And you don't, I mean, falling out of these hammocks, I deliberately rope the hammocks high to keep the bugs, all the land-living bugs away from us. So, yeah, you don't wear a watch at night. I would recommend not doing that.
Completely.
Yeah, but a very cool watch, and as you say, it's that single red line, isn't it? I think that is one of the kind of key things that always pops out. Every time I look at a picture of that watch, it's the single red line that I love.
And it's a watch that really, I mean, I'm not sure it's going to sound right in English, but it's a carnal pleasure. It's like something on your wrist. It just feels comfortable. Yeah. Like the click of the bezel, just the way it wears on your wrist. It's just something that makes me happy, and that's what watches are supposed to do. I mean, they tell time.
Yeah.
But I feel that every watch that I buy also tells a story.
Yeah, yeah.
That's happy.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, for me, the Sea-Dweller is, as a big Rolex fan, the Sea-Dweller is an important watch because it really is, again, as I said earlier, not just, I mean, obviously the R&D that Rolex do into watches is massive and goes on, but also it's the true tool watch, isn't it? This watch wasn't a fashion accessory. It wasn't in line with the latest styles. They needed to create a dive watch that could seriously go to depths and cope with the decompression that saturation divers have to live through. And that was their solution to that problem.
Watch.
Say that again, sorry?
Ultimate tool watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's very, very cool. Very, very cool. So, yeah, we've covered the dive watches. We've got the Seiko. We've got the Rolex. Let's move on to a watch that I think you are, you know, pretty famous for.
So I distinctly remember, I think it was about 5 years ago. When I went to Basel World, and I was invited by the boutique in Geneva because I already purchased a few watches from there. And I got to meet Reynald, and I got even to meet some guys from R&D, and they presented to me the white Snoopy. I lost my mind. The contrast between that like super white dial, those like hard Luminova indexes with black overlay, and then the little Snoopy there, like, and I think it's with the bubble that he's talking.
Yeah,
it resounds today even more than ever before, where it says failure is not an option.
Yeah, I'm gonna share the pic. Let me.
Yes.
Yeah, I do love it. I think there's something again about this watch that is just so cool, isn't it?
They really nailed it. I mean, it's a ceramic bezel with Luminova inlaid numbers on the tachymeter. The contrast is, for me, I like white dial Speedmasters. I didn't the first, but now I really love them. And the first one I got was the Alaska Project. That's what actually the first Speedmaster I bought in the shop in Geneva.
Oh yeah.
And this one just like really, really does it for me. And on top of that, there's a couple things. Since I was a very, very young boy, a couple years old, my mom always made me birthday parties on the theme of Snoopy.
Oh right, okay.
So I have like, she made me with those cookie, like butter cookies. She made me the house. And then she made like a proper cake in the shape of Snoopy with like, and then a regular cake, like a Joe Cool paper candle holder. I mean, so I remember very vividly Snoopy being part of my life. And the whole peanut gallery, and it's one of my funny expressions, like, oh, the peanut gallery doesn't mind. I tell it to people sometimes. They look at me like, what? And it's an expression. Like, yeah, because they're all critics, you know? So,
okay.
So for me, it's Snoopy's always been part of my life, and I have you can't really see, but I have like every version of either the Flying Ace or Snoopy, space traveler, astronaut, little
cool
figurines, which are actually hard to come by to have the whole collection, and I got them all.
Oh wow.
Anyways, yeah, so Snoopy's always been a part, and on top of that, I've always been a fan of the moon. The moon, NASA, space exploration. And separate from that, years later, when I was, I think 13 years old, we'll do a segue into that, but we'll come back to that. But my father gave me my first Speedmaster.
Okay.
So basically, the white Snoopy, for me, is like, it's a Snoopy about successful failure, as they called it, inside of a Speedmaster to go to the moon. So it was like an all-encompassing cool watch for me.
Yeah. What I love about this watch, obviously, apart from the aesthetics, I like the white dial against the black bezel. I love this reference here on the first 14 seconds. What could you do in 14 seconds? Which refers, well, I'll let you tell the story of that.
So basically, they the successful fit actually met one person involved in purveying all the stuff that went on the missions, on the Apollo, what went on board. Like basically everything that was on board had to be vetted back on Earth. Whether it was the pencil, whether it was the duct tape, the wiring, whatever it was, had to be vetted for space travel for whatever reasons. And the Apollo 13 had an issue where they basically lost their oxygen on the return capsule. And it's the same capsule they used to take off, where they sit during takeoff. And as they were the orbiting module, not the lunar lander, so they had to jerry rig the carbon dioxide filtering system from the lunar lander, which was not produced by the same people, as to basically have a filtering system. So that's because if they have oxygen is one thing, but you produce carbon monoxide. And what happens is, it doesn't matter how much oxygen you pump in, you need to take out the CO2. Sorry, not carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide. But anyways, you have to filter out the CO2. So they had to generate the filtering system on the Apollo capsule to come back, for them to safely come back. And also they had power issues. So they couldn't power everything, either life support or guidance support. So they decided to power life support, because that's why that was good. Yeah. So they had to fire to enter the atmosphere at the right angle calculated by the people back on Earth in Houston. They had to fire the retro boosters every 14 seconds. And that's what it was. And it did it thanks to the chronograph of the Speedmaster.
Brilliant.
Because the onboard computer didn't work.
Yeah, this is a great story. Again, it's more than just a cool accessory. It's paying homage to something that was a life-saving tool for these guys. And I think that's something that I wonder whether people lose sight of with these vintage watches, is that they aren't just cool things, either something that you love, something that looks great, or an investment. They are, or are certainly with modern interpretations, are based on really important tools that kept people alive, divers, astronauts. They relied on these tools of tools of their trade to get through these things as unscathed as possible.
It's interesting. That's why, I mean, my brother and I, we specialize in tool watches. And people ask me, what are tool watches? And I'm like, those are watches that were used by astronauts, explorers, divers, and military divers, civilian divers, whatever it was. They used by race car drivers. We sold watches used by doctors. We used watches that were used by filmmakers. They were able to time and know how much of the film they had used, so they know how much more film they needed to buy. Because when you buy a roll, you know how long it is, but you don't know how long it lasts.
Yeah.
So they had watches like film compacts, for example, that could tell you that, which is really cool. It will tell you depending on what size film you use. So all these little details made it so much fun, because you realize that the Speedmaster was a purely civilian watch made for land racers, and because of its high legibility and the fact that pilots, test pilots had used it, it went into the running to become tested by NASA and passed all the tests. And they like boiled them, dropped them, froze them, spun them around, whatever it was, which like couldn't survive, but the watch does.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned, I mean, obviously you and your brother are well-known as Speedmaster fanatics. You've unearthed and have dealt in some of the finest examples. You also mentioned about doctors earlier, which I think is a great segue into your fourth choice. And I know this watch is very special to you.
So yeah, my father never really collected watches. He just had a bunch of cool watches, you know, which didn't seem so cool back then in the 80s. It was like, you know, whatever. I mean, there were watches. And I remember he tells me the story. He's like, yeah, and I think it was either like late 69 or early 70s. I think it was early 1970 actually. He came to Geneva with his father for work. Like they were, you know, he's a gem dealer, and Geneva was a very important place for large gem dealers, especially cut stones. And they went to the shop down the street from our current shop, like literally, I don't know, 500 yards away.
Oh, well, right, okay, I don't know this story. This is brilliant.
And about 500 yards away, and they bought two watches. So my grandfather bought a C-case Constellation chronometer with a fluted bezel.
Very cool.
And a Mark II racing dial. Wow.
Okay, I'm going to share this because this is a really great looking watch. There we go.
So that's my dad's Mark II. I mean, now it's mine. He gave it to me like 30 years ago now. So it's really one of the funnest watches I wear. And the funny story behind this watch is that everything is tritium, everything's original, but I would say other than the case back and 2/3 of the bracelet, everything else came through service, because the watch was serviced in the 80s, it was serviced in the 90s, and it was serviced in the early 2000s. Thank God I was able to keep my original dial the dial in the hands. But I know that pretty much everything else was swapped out through service, because the movement, when I went to get it archived, I was like, because it's cool to do. They were like, oh, service movement. And I was like, okay. Service movement. I was like, that's it? They're like, that's it. So it's funny to know that a first owner watch has like all service parts. So since it's my watch, I don't care. But if I were I would be, if my father was like selling the watch to me, I'd be like, no, I'm not interested.
Yeah, okay. The difference between sentimental value and market value, I guess.
More than that, I meet people who, let's say they received a watch like 20 years ago, or and the watch was already 40 years old by then. Makes a big difference. Like, I don't care that it has a service bracelet, service hands, whatever. It's just how I feel. And so one of our clients, we usually don't do that, but one of our clients got a watch when he like graduated, or when he was, I don't know, when he was quite young. And the watch went for service. He got it in the 60s, late 60s. And then he got a service in the 80s. They replaced everything. Other than the movements,
right?
He replaced everything. It took us like 2 years to find all the proper parts to make his watch all correct again. So we were very happy to help him, but we don't do that anymore.
It's a nightmare, isn't it? You see, and you know, I get this with Tudor watches very often. People emailing me saying, "I've got the chance to buy this," and it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because you can get a great deal if you buy a watch with a service dial and hands and service insert. But then if that's a watch that somebody just wants to wear and enjoy, there's nothing wrong with that, and that's brilliant. And good luck to them. And it'll probably be, you know, able to withstand a swim or whatever. The problem is when people want to try and find the original parts. I mean, it was hard enough 15, 20 years ago, I would imagine. Now it's impossible and or incredibly expensive.
It's we get called all the time for parts, and I try to stay nice, but we can't find them, you know. And let's say we happen to have like a dial, or we happen to have like a bezel, and they came through like a lot of watches that we bought. It's not our business. Like, we're not into, you know, we try to find watches as original as possible. Quick little story. This morning I met with a dear friend in Geneva who works for an auction house, to show him one of the latest watches that we bought. And he called me a couple of days ago, super excited. He's like, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful. Can I see it?" I was like, "Yeah." So we went to our favorite coffee shop that's like barely reopened because it's closed on Tuesdays now. So we had to wait till this morning. I just came back up now, and he sees the watch and was like, "Can you tell me about it?" I'm like, basically, the only thing I did is polish the crystal. Everything else is original. The dial, the lume, the hands, its lume, the case, the crystal's original, just been repolished. He was like, he put it on his wrist. He's like, "Mine." So when we buy watches, when we do our trade, is we like to, I mean, especially my brother, he's like, "Listen, I don't do projects." It's like, either the watch is like born beautiful or I don't buy it. Because, like, let's say, okay, fine, you have to find a crown. Okay. The watch is head only, there's no strap. Well, you put a nice leather strap, or we find like a tropic strap or whatever.
Yeah.
But we don't, it's, for us, it's, we like to find like beautiful, unrestored, like in cars, like barn finds, beautifully unrestored.
Yeah.
We don't do this, the leather, the seats. We don't want to have to repaint we just want to have beautiful watches. If the watch needs a service, that's fine. But other than that, we don't get into it.
Yeah. Cool.
So it's quite a nice feeling. You know, when someone like sees the work you've done, like treasure hunting, you know, like I'm not going to say Indiana Jones, but Indiana Jones style. Like, you really have to find the right people who get to the right places, and sometimes there's some like weird stuff going on, and you gotta get, you know. But we're treasure hunters, and then our clients, they come to us, and when they buy, they're like, "Oh yeah, okay, how much? Let's do it."
Cool. So going back to this, just remind me, what date is this this Mark II? When do they date to?
So since the movement, I can't date it because it's a 1989 movement. According to my dad, it's either late 69 or early 1970. The case back, if I'm not mistaken, it's a first series Mark II, which has a patent pending, but in French. It says demande de brevet. So it's a patent pending from 1967 patent where they changed something in the case. So the first, according to what I know, is a first generation Mark II case, which has a 67 date in it. So that's it. And I really like so the case shape is very retro, very 70s, but the dial, I think the gray, the orange, the red, for me, does it for us. And I think it's, my brother remembers this dial so much from when I was younger, from my dad. I mean, I wore it when I was younger. That's one of the first things he did when he had enough money. He bought himself the modern 2004 Japan Racing because he was in charge of the Japanese market for a previous company we worked for.
Oh, so right, okay. Oh, that's quite cool. Yeah, I love that. The grey and orange, going back to, I love Tudor and the home plate, that kind of, it's interesting, 6970, perfect for the Tudor 703-1 and 703-2. And that orange stopwatch hand, the grey dial with the orange accents, there must have been something in the air at that time of those colours for watch brands. Yeah.
Same color, same the orange scheme, the black at the center of the white hands. You have you see the color schemes that come out, like Tudor, Rolex, Omega. I mean, today this is for us the three most important vintage brands. Like basically, if we never have to sell another brand, and we only have Tudor, Rolex, and Omega to sell, we'll be very happy because they have everything we want.
Yeah, absolutely. Also interesting, this is a pulsations watch. I have noticed over the past, well, everybody, it's not especially to me, but I've noticed, as have a lot of people, the huge interest in these watches, particularly from certain brands. A pulsation scale makes something incredibly desirable. What's your view on that?
So, scales on watches were always basically on a 60-unit scale or 12-hour scale, rotating or non-rotating. You have the outer bezel, or you have just the hour markers, which are, 5 minutes, whatever. So this is the basic scale that the watch came in. And then you started having, with the watch becoming more of a utility watch, you had different scales that were born. And the most famous one is a tachymeter, which is basically what you see on the outside of the Daytona and the Speedmaster.
Yeah.
And it varied for military purposes in telemeter, in miles or kilometers, where you can tell from when you see lights, then you hear the sound, the start-stop of that timing, it tells you how far it is. You have the decimal for more scientific purposes, which the Speedmaster also had an option of the bezel that you find on like decimal dials on many brands. Like I have a blank right now, but many brands have that also. And then you have the pulsations bezel, which was exclusively for doctors and nurses, where it's very simple. You basically hold the pulse, you count 15 heartbeats, and you stop the chronograph, and it tells you your heart rate. Which, it's difficult sometimes when you need to figure it out, or you need to know someone's like in 15 seconds or less, you have diagnostic. And for like field medicine, or for old school doctors, or people who don't have the fancy machines today, that was a great tool, another tool watch. And I find that the Omega was the first brand to offer all those options on bezels as of 1960, if I'm not mistaken. You can find them on the 2915-3, the last series, as well as 298-1s. That's when it was born, and it's such a cool thing to say this watch was bought by a doctor because it has a pulsations bezel. So my father, before becoming a gem dealer with his father, was in medical school he did like 90% of his medical school, and he quit the last year, I think, to help his father work, which I thought was always a funny story. So
yeah, okay.
So that has that pulsation bezel. I think it's a really nice, little addition.
Yeah, definitely. And collectors seem to go crazy for them, particularly when it's on an iconic reference like a Speedmaster or a Daytona or pre-Daytona. The pulsation scale can make such a huge difference, can't it? To
even in the chronographs, like a
yeah.
Patek Philippe chronograph has like a base 1000 tachymeter, which all tachymeters are base 1000, whether it says base 1000 or not on the scale. But with the pulsation bezel, just makes it like, imagine somebody had to be like, I want a pulsation bezel. Like, they have to be that specific, and it makes it that much rarer, like a yachting dial. Like brands made only yachting dials, which is one side. But imagine, imagine we know of the Daytona yachting dial.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, Omega has like not a yachting, but it has like those cut ups, so you can count in 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Cool. Roy, thank you so much. 4 great watches covering, I think, all our bases while we're here on the island. We might have a bit of downtime as well in between our diving for oysters in the Sea-Dweller and timing the flyover, the seagull flyovers on the Speedmasters. But maybe we'll have some time with a drink to have a read. Did you get a chance to pack a book?
So I gave this some thought, and I thought I would just pack the Bible.
Perfect.
Not because I'm religious or anything, but I just feel that there are answers to everything in there. I mean, literally, they tell you how to build a boat. It tells you how to build a city. It tells you the rules of law. It tells you how to do everything in life.
Yeah.
People who dive deep, there is, algebra, geometry, basic science. They explain so many things. Which, like, let's say when you catch a fish, it tells you what kind of fish you can like, let's say, eat and without having to worry about poison inside or whatever. They give you all these little details on how to live your life. And on a grander scheme, also it's a book about all these special characters which have shaped billions of people's lives. So for me, there's always something to be inspired from. There's always a fancy quote about self-growth, about forgiveness, about building, they even gives you business advice. Like the book even gives you business advice, like how to be a better.
It's great for us. It can be the blueprint. We can maybe, if we're stuck here for a long time, we can create our utopian world on our desert island using the Bible as our blueprint. I don't think we'll go far wrong doing that.
There's a few places that use the Bible to build their world, so I think we're good.
I think we're good. We're good, and the fishing will be particularly important for when we're, checking out what we get in our nets later on when we fire up the barbecue and get some fish on it.
Very, very true.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me here. It's been great to hear about some of your fantastic watches. Always a pleasure to chat and catch up and hear some of the stories. And hopefully I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Ross.
Take care now. Bye, Roy.